YouTube.
You spelled mycologist wrong on the
Yep.
title.
Well, too late now. I'm an idiot forever. I'm going to chalk it up to speed. Yeah. Well, that actually was because of speed. I'm not that stupid, luckily.
No worries.
We can change it afterwards. My apologies to the grammar Nazis out there. You actually don't even have to be a grammar Nazi to hate that one.
No worries.
You just have to know English.
No worries.
All right. Well,
most people don't know what mycology is anyway, so.
That's probably true, huh? All right. And Maggie, just give me 20 seconds, and it is all you. I just got to connect the social chat.
Okay.
Go ahead, Maggie, whenever you're ready, and I'll get the camera on you.
Yeah. Alrighty. Hello. Welcome to Minds on Mushrooms, where we're unveiling the magic behind psychedelics for mental health and addiction. I'm your host, Maggie Kirkwood. And with me today, my special guest, we have Byron Emmons, who's a mycologist and also owner of Elevated Mycology. Welcome.
Thank you.
So excited to have you here and so much to talk about. I just wanted to get it out of the way. We're here to talk about not only psychedelic mushrooms, we've got functional and medicinal mushrooms. I think for our viewers, I'd like to start there. Let's just kind of start on the functional side.
Sure. Should we define what each of them are?
I'd love for you to. Thank you.
Of course. So a gourmet mushroom would be defined as a edible mushroom, so one that won't kill you, that is, edible delicacy choice for eating. So cooked with, butter, garlic in a dish. Typical examples are oysters or lion's mane, or your button mushroom, portobello mushroom. Those would be in the gourmet. The functional or medicinal mushrooms would be ones that are also edible, don't kill you, but then aren't necessarily choice for eating. So you're not generally cooking a reishi or a turkey tail with garlic and butter, but you are extracting them for their beneficial compounds and then ingesting them into your body that way. So it's the fiber of them that makes them hard to eat, hard to chop, but is what we want for the beneficials. And then medicinal or psychedelic would be mushrooms that contain psilocybin and the compound of chemicals in that psilocybin category. So those are also ones that you can ingest. Not going to kill you, but their effects are going to be more. They're going to have their own effect. Yes, exactly. So, yep.
Let's talk about your origin story here.
Sure.
So from what I understand, did you start growing more of the functional, medicinal, gourmet first? Or let's talk about your love for mushrooms in general.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say that goes back to my childhood. I was lucky enough to grow up, here in the east side of the cities. My family had 3 acres, which connected to 40, which connected to 4,000. So my backyard was really just a massive forest. So I was able to, as a child, just go explore. I was able to just go into the woods, sometimes for the entire day, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, just go out and explore. So definitely all things ecology were out there. I was definitely noticing the mushrooms. I was definitely trying to understand them. At the time, didn't really think about cultivating them or what they were doing or their, impact on the local, biosphere. But through in college, got a little bit more into ecology and into how they function in the ecosystem and just kind of really starting to appreciate them that way. After school, in school I was studying a bit of horticulture and agriculture and understanding their impact on the mycorrhizae, fungi, and different things and how they interact with plants and how they're really great beneficial for plants and agriculture and stuff like that. And then right after school, I read the Paul Stamets book, Mycelium Running, How Mushrooms Can Save the Planet. I was working at a ski hill as a lift operator and, didn't have too much to do. So I would just sit there and I read that book cover to cover, I think about 4 times in a row that first winter, and definitely was hooked. Definitely, Paul Stamets is a pioneer in the industry and has done a lot for mushrooms. And that book is a great intro for people who aren't super familiar with fungi and what they can do for yourself or for the planet or just what they are, what is a mushroom, what is fungi. It's a great place to start. So from there, ordered a couple of kits from his company, Fungi Perfecti. Ended up moving out to California and working on a CSA co-op out there, and ordered some of his kits. Grew some shiitake, some lion's mane, some oyster, just kind of in the barn garage area out there, and was lucky enough to be friends with a guy who was the farmer for the Sierra Nevada brewery.
Oh, okay.
Because they had a staff farmer who would grow stuff for them, and he was growing a lot of gourmet mushrooms as well. So I was able to talk with him and kind of bounce ideas off him and understand it a little bit better. Didn't really see his operation or anything like that, but that was really cool just to kind of bounce ideas and get some enthusiasm from him. From there, didn't do a whole lot with it. Did move into horticulture and agriculture. I wanted to be a farmer, basically, at that point after that. And incorporated a lot of the healthy mycelium in what I was doing. I was making compost tea for residential properties here in the area. So compost tea is a brew of beneficial bacterial and fungi used to inoculate the soil and to grow. It's kind of like the probiotics for the soil. Okay. If you think about taking probiotics for your body, that's basically what the compost tea is. And so it kind of gives the plants a better immune system and gives them what they need to succeed out there. So I was brewing that essentially by thousands of gallons, and we were applying that to residents in the area, and I was seeing amazing results of that. So I guess you could kind of say that was first large-scale mycology, growing it not for the fruiting body, but for the mycelium and for the beneficial compounds of that. So then from there, got interested in growing psilocybin-containing mushrooms for their mental health benefits, and went down a road of, your kind of typical social media, YouTube sort of pathways, having an experience with them, not coming from complete scratch, but kind of understanding what those mushrooms are, what they need, and kind of the typical process of growing them. Kind of did that deep dive into that. Had some successful grows, and we'll get into kind of how that helped me later on. But then also just started growing lion's mane and reishi and multiple different oysters, and just really enjoying that. And then the ability to be able to cook that and eat that was just fantastic. The freshness of that. I mean, always been somebody who's liked portobellos or buttons, but man, the fresh oyster mushrooms, fresh lion's mane is so much better than a button or a portobello these days. I was hooked at that point. So that was a few years ago, and through that process, got very much into the process of it. I've always been a lifelong educator, and it was definitely hard to find kind of the right things or the right read between the lines on what I really needed to be doing. So you'd go on these YouTubes or these social media dives, and people would explain this tech or that tech, and just like, okay, why are they doing it this way? Why are they doing it that way? And kind of pull apart those things. And after I had kind of gotten established and gotten all my setup going, I was just kind of trying to figure out how I could help others do this. And being the educator that I am, I thought, well, if I made a company and I said, I'll give people the right knowledge and the right tools and the right good genetics and good supplies and all of those things in good kits, and then more people might be interested in this and be successful. So that was kind of the impetus of Elevated Mycology, was just bringing these things out and keeping them, getting the education out there, getting the proper tools out there. Because if you just go online and you just say, just type in Google, how I want to grow a mushroom, you're going to get a lot.
Millions of things. So you kind of look at Elevated Mycology kind of like a hub for all things growing and cultivating.
Yep. The goal is anybody at any level can come to Elevated Mycology and be successful. So if it's your first time ever, you've never even heard of what lion's mane is, or never even seen one, doesn't even know what it looks like, I'll be successful. Or I've helped people establish full-on commercial farms with Elevated Mycology, where people that are starting and trying to grow and be successful and figure out what the tools they need and supplies they need and the cultures they need and stuff like that. So if it's your first time ever or you're looking to grow 1,000 pounds a month, no problem, I can help you. So
Wow.
yeah.
So would you say, were you more or less fascinated around the growing and the cultivating and watching these beautiful creatures, grow? Or is there any particular mushroom that kind of got to your heart? And I know you like the taste.
Yes, the gourmet, the choice gourmet is definitely up there. They all are. I mean, just mycelium, is just such a fascinating thing. Again, a lot of people don't understand, what they are, how they grow, how they work, what they are, just what they are. So that's a large part of elevated mycology in the classes I've taught is just breaking it down to like you've got your plant, your animal, and your fungi. What does that mean? Well, how is a fungi different than a plant or an animal? And starting at that level for a lot of people is really necessary just so that they can build their knowledge from that.
I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
Sure. So even modern science didn't classify fungi as their own kingdom on Earth until I think it was like 1986 or 88. I'm sure somebody will correct me. They just thought they were weird plants, basically, up until that point, and they really hadn't been studying them. And then they looked at it and they decided, these are fantastically different than other things. So a plant is essentially defined as an organism that gets its chemical energy from the sun, so it's able to photosynthesize and it's able to pull that energy in. An animal is essentially an organism that gets its chemical energy from outside of its environment or outside of its person in its environment, takes that and puts it into their body, into their stomach, digests it that way. And fungi is essentially an organism that goes out and finds its chemical energy, but instead of getting big and ingesting it, it gets up right up next to it, cell to cell, and spits out the digestive enzymes as those things break down, then they absorb that and bring it in. So it's kind of a scale difference of animals are big, we ingest, animals ingest, where mycelium stays small and get up right next to their food cell to cell and then break it down that way. So
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I just think for the viewers, I get a lot of questions about mushrooms in general, but is there any way, I'd like to just kind of pick maybe, just kind of keeping on the track of functional medicinal mushrooms right now, just some benefits of, let's say, lion's mane, reishi, and turkey tail.
Sure. I'm going to reference my computer because there is a lot of them. Reishi is a fantastic mushroom. It has a lot of benefits. The main one is kind of its anti-cancer, anti-tumor abilities. So it is able to reduce inflammation and inhibit tumor growth, and just generally promote your immune system.
Okay.
It does that through what are called beta-glucans. So beta-glucans are part of the cell walls of every fungi, and they're essentially a polysaccharide. They're a really complex starch. So simple starches are your rices, your potatoes, your different things like that, where polysaccharides are much more complex and they're indigestible by our upper GI tract. And so they actually make it down into our lower GI tract where they're absorbed by our M cells and help regulate our immune system. So they're actually able to tell your body what are good things in your body, what are bad things in your body. They're able to say, like, hey, you don't have to react to that much. They can reduce the inflammation and say, hey, actually, that's not that bad. Let's tone it down a little bit. Or like, hey, this thing's not great. We need to really go and attack it. And we can, it's been shown, like turkey tail as well, it's been shown, because turkey tail and reishi are the highest in beta-glucans. So they're very, very fibrous, which is why you wouldn't want to eat them with butter and garlic. But if you can extract out those beta-glucans and get them into a way that they're bioavailable into your body, then they can really, 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 really help with your immune system. So, but reishi can also help regulate blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar levels, can reduce pain, can be good for liver functioning. They can relieve symptoms of anxiety, insomnia, and depression, improve generative cognitive functioning, overall energy levels, and have been shown to benefit lung and respiratory functioning too for reishi. So, and it's been documented used for 6,000 to 10,000 years in other cultures and stuff like that. So it's definitely not a new thing on the market. It might be new in your Whole Foods aisle, but it is not new for human consumption. So
I hear that.
Yeah.
Maybe let's go with I know lion's mane.
Yeah, lion's
is-
mane's very trendy right now. It's definitely one of the
Yes.
bigger ones that's out there, and lion's mane has a lot of the beta glucans and different things like that as well. But it also has a lot of other compounds that have been shown to actually improve nerve functioning and repair nerves even. So it's being used for a lot of cognitive diseases. So Alzheimer's, ADHD, again, general depression and anxiety. It's being shown to work for. A lot of people will microdose with it. So, microdosing lion's mane is very, very trendy, very,
Yes.
very thing.
Stomach stuff, correct, with niacin.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And so antibiotic properties, anti-carcinogenic, anti-inflammatory, general antioxidant, how it can help regulate and even lower your blood pressure. So, yeah.
Alrighty. Do you know anything about cordyceps? I'm going to switch it up because I
Yes.
feel I've been getting questions, and maybe you'll prove me wrong or right, but is there any correlation with cordyceps and muscle repair?
It can be, yeah. So cordyceps are very trendy right now. That I'm blanking on the video game turned movie or HBO series that came out. I'm sure somebody again will correct me.
Oh, Squid Game?
No, not Squid Game. It was all about cordyceps because cordyceps are different than your other mushrooms where they are parasitic. So they do the spores land on ants, spiders, caterpillars, and will actually grow within the cells of these insects.
Okay.
And will take over their nervous system.
Wow.
And actually cause them to climb up to a branch that's more beneficial for the fungi. Then it will kill it. Will fully digest it, kill it, and then we'll sprout the mushroom off the top of it. So it is a parasitic mushroom. It doesn't affect mammals. So people wonder you're growing cordyceps, you're going to turn into a zombie, and it's no, not necessarily. They maybe in a few million years, but not yet. So one thing it has been shown to do, a lot of athletes will use it because it does naturally increase your dissolved oxygen levels in your blood. And so I know it's used a lot. It's becoming very trendy in a lot of pre-workouts to have cordyceps in there because it can naturally, without any steroids or anything like that, increase your dissolved oxygen levels and can be good for athletes.
Wow.
So,
There's just so much to learn about each. I think that show, is it The Last of Us?
yes, thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
yes.
Yep. So cordyceps, went from weird
Right.
Cheeto things to actually, and then so then it's also managing the misconception of it, where again it's not going to affect mammals, it's not going to affect you in a negative way, it's going to affect you in a positive way. It's going to
Great.
great for kidneys, just general energy levels. I know we mentioned before, you're talking about the coffees, the mushroom coffees.
Yes.
It is shown to it's kind of that caffeine replacement. So it doesn't do the same thing as caffeine, but it's been proven to actually increase the ATP pathways in every cell of your body. So it actually makes your body more efficient and gives you more energy that way. So it is being used as a morning or mid-afternoon. One of my previous jobs, I was drinking it as a mid-afternoon tea because it was great because it was just able to get me through that afternoon lug of the day without going for another cup of coffee or something like that.
I swear by it in the same capacity. I like to have it before heading to the gym too. And I do feel like it's a different burst of energy, or different from your caffeine. Maybe shorter lived, but a little bit more intense, and spot on for me, or when I'm needing it. So yeah, I think a big part of you being here today, I really do, I'd like to talk more about, I guess, your personal story as it comes to mushrooms and mental health. Would you be willing to kind of, well, and I can start off, I kind of briefly have talked to you about my story, and a lot of the audience knows. For me, I was able to quit drinking alcohol thanks to psilocybin, and it just was so magical that it set me down on this whole path of, trying to figure out why we aren't all just freaking out and talking about this daily. So I just love connecting with other people who, who are believe they're healthier today, or mentally healthier, happier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll speak to a little bit. I was drinking heavily as well. It was a very unhealthy level of it. It was affecting my personal life and professional life, and my own sanity. And mushrooms, the psilocybin mushrooms came into my life at a point where I was ready for change. I mean, I think that was a big thing, with any addiction, you have to be ready and wanting and willing to change for it to be effective. But it was something where I was able to use psilocybin in a microdose setting before the urge to drink would come on. So I was able to, it was usually after work, after a stressful day at work, where I'd come home and a couple hours later would crack open a beer and start doing that. So I was able to take a microdose a little bit earlier in the day before I knew that was going to come. And then when I got to that point of the night where that also the habit of it, drinking also becomes a very habitual thing as well. So there's obviously a very addictive part of it as well, but it's also kind of a habitual habit. So at that point, I would just the habit was broken. I didn't feel that need for that disconnection with life that alcohol brings. It's a very unhealthy disconnection, and so I was able to very much move myself in a direction that I wanted to be at. I wanted to be a better person for myself, those around me, and be happier. I wanted to be happy, and it allowed me the mental space to figure out why I wasn't happy and what was happening around me and what I was doing to myself and what I was doing to those around me, and give me some perspective that was greatly needed.
So were you kind of caught off guard with this, all the good things happening this way, or were you aware that you could be using psilocybin as a tool to help, I guess, rid yourself of alcohol?
Sure. No, I think it caught me off guard for sure. I think I was, again, I knew what I was doing was not what I wanted to be doing, but I definitely wasn't intentionally, wasn't intentionally stopping drinking. I was still buying alcohol at the store. I was still bringing it home. It was still around me. I hadn't done that much of it, but it was breaking that habit, breaking that ritual of it, and finding something that was much, much healthier for myself and for me, to not wake up with a hangover and to be able to be more clear-headed and be able to process life, because alcohol doesn't help you process it, just numbs it. And so the problems that you have before you drink are still there after you drink.
Right.
You've just delayed them. You've set them a few days or hours or days or weeks later, and you don't resolve them, where mushrooms allow you this. Psilocybin allows you the brain space to process, allows you the ability to observe and think of it in a different way and process it in a way that alcohol definitely can't. So.
I love hearing that. Just since this show has started, I've had a handful of friends reach out, and the number one question they're asking me is, like, how did you do it, or how you? Because I think I'm committed to not drinking again, and I think just hearing your side and my own experience, I guess it's just important because I want people to realize that it wasn't like you said one day, I'm done altogether, and I think you said you still might have a drink here and there, but you've learned your own healthy way of doing so. So
Exactly.
I think that's a big thing that I would like the audience to know, that it's just with psilocybin, it's a way to another option, because I feel like we have limited options for.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I think we wanted to talk a little bit about micro versus macro dosing
Yes,
with addiction.
yes.
And I think this would be a good time to talk about that, because I did it through like a micro dosing type of thing, where some people can do it through a macro. And the difference of that being your kind of dosage level. So a micro dose is defined as something that doesn't change your perception. So it doesn't, you're not tripping, you're not seeing things, you're not doing that. It's like taking an Advil, your knee hurts, you take an Advil, 45 minutes later, your knee doesn't hurt. It's kind of that sort of thing. It's kind of a mental Advil. Your depression's a little less, your anxiety is a little less, your need to drink or your desire to drink is a little less, without it being like a big thing. Versus a macro is going to be, depending on many different factors, might be 2 grams to 10 grams depending on the person, and that is meant to be a very jarring experience, where you are able to kind of really break yourself at a very, very deep spiritual cognitive level, break yourself out of those things and maybe re-examine why you're doing that. And for people who have addiction of alcohol, of other drugs, It's being shown very effective with eating disorders and things like that. Many OCD. There's tons of different things where it's being shown of being able to like break you out of that shell. You have kind of these cognitive layers and shells of behavior that you've kind of been conditioned to, and it allows you to actually break out of those and see yourself in a different setting or see yourself in a different way, that you can come out of that trip, out of that experience, and look at yourself and say, okay, that's why I was doing X behavior.
Sure.
And then you can maintain that with microdosing. You don't have to do a macro dose, every day or every week or every month or even every year. Some people, it's one and done. That's all they need.
Right.
And then they've been able to do that. But the microdose can be something that can be used, in a stressful situation, a stressful day at work. You can't change your job. Well, maybe you can, microdose after a big meeting and be like, okay, things are going to be fine.
Right.
I don't need to go for the drink or for the whatever you might want to afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. And again, options regarding micro or macro or anywhere in between.
Exactly.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be, I'm hoping there's going to be a lot of interest around the cultivation aspect. And for me, I've been wondering myself, why the heck have I not even attempted or dabbled
in growing?
In growing.
Sure.
And, I know we can head to your site and there's all sorts of information, and you have information about, or do you actually sell grow kits and you can set people up? So
yeah. I mean, if I don't have it on the website, I have everything that you could possibly need to grow.
Yes.
So if I don't have it available on the website, I can custom make it for you or figure out a thing. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to grow. I will say the caveat there is that not everybody has to grow it. It is something that is it's for some people. It's not for some people. It can. Well, yeah. Go ahead and.
Well, no, I'm just my question is, let's. I hear. Well, you said it yourself. All over the internet, there's. So many, I know people that are using Uncle Ben's rice bags, and then you've got your big tubs. I've seen beautiful aquarium type situations.
Sure.
But I guess at the end of the day, if I wanted to be productive and have some, let's just say psilocybin product.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about each of the categories of mushrooms and why you'd want to grow them yourself. But yeah, definitely in the psilocybin, to have a proper experience, you do need to trust the product that you're getting, and so to kind of take the stigma away from that sketchy guy in the street corner with a Ziploc bag full of something weird and ugly and smelly, for some people that might be what it takes for them to allow themselves to use it as medicine and to have that experience. So yeah, there are a lot of what are generally called all-in-one kits. I would definitely say that in the space, there's a lot of good products and a lot of bad products and a lot of products in between. And so you definitely want to do your research, find somebody who's reputable, find somebody who has good reviews on products that work well, because there are a lot of products that don't work well or are not done properly. Obviously, plug myself as somebody who I hope would fits the category of somebody who knows what they're doing. But there's definitely, you can get them on Etsy, you can get them on Amazon now, I think even sells them. You can get them pretty easily. A lot of stores are selling them now even too. But you definitely need to know a little bit about what you're doing. You need to know the difference of, are you doing spores? Are you doing liquid culture? Are you doing agar? What type of genetics are you getting? There is a little bit more to it than just kind of like buy something off Etsy and hope that it grows, sort of thing, where again comes into what I promote is a lot of like education and helping people through the process and understanding what it is. And you might not be successful your first time, and you can always try again. But if you are successful, say you are just trying to microdose with psilocybin, one all-in-one kit, a good successful all-in-one kit could be enough for you to microdose for a whole year, and that could be depending on your dosage and frequency and all that sort of stuff. But for many people, one kit could be enough for that. And where it's coming from. You also have that personal connection to it. You saw it grow. You saw it fruit. You harvested it. You dried it. You've prepared it. And so it can also help with a bonding experience with it as well. So
hey guys, just to break in real quick. First of all, I've got a bunch of questions on the addiction stuff sure. That we can double back to later. But I have your website up with your kits if you want to kind of take people through it at all. I mean, I know I have some questions just about like what do people need for space to do it? You know, how hard is it to grow? Like just some kind of practical things like that.
Sure. I mean, most kits, again, depending on your type of mushroom, but you know, if you're growing an oyster, lion's mane, reishi, you know, these are kits that are very small. These are, you know, maybe 4 by 6 or 4 by 8 inches, and you can grow them typically, you know, just in your kitchen, in your bathroom. You can set up a little space for them. They don't need to be, you know, in a dark, deep cave of your house by any means.
It doesn't need like an aquarium in your
No.
basement or whatever like that.
No. I mean, there's different levels to it. You know, it depends on why you're growing it. So, you know, we talked about, you know, and psilocybin's a similar way. Most of these all-in-one kits, a lot of times they're in a bag or they're something like that that are pretty confined and easy. And so it just depends on some environmental things and why you're growing. If you're growing for gourmet choice eating and you're growing oysters, you can just grow them on your kitchen counter. They might not get as big and as beautiful as one that you might find at a store or a farmer's market, but you're still going to get a successful harvest. And the benefit is that if you learn when you need to harvest it, then you can get that from the block, you know, from the growing kit to your frying pan in 5 minutes, you know, and you'll get that freshness that you just, you know, it's just unmistakable once you've tasted that fresh of a mushroom. It's just amazing. So it really just depends on kind of what you're wanting to grow. There are some people who have these, they're called Martha tents. They're kind of confined tents that control the humidity. There's one in the background there, that green. And so that's one where you've kind of confined them when you're controlling the humidity and controlling the airflow. And so you're going to get bigger, better, more beautiful mushrooms at that point. But you don't need it. This is not a hobby that you need to invest, you know, $500 to $1,000 into to get started. You really can just get a kit from again, me or
that's exactly what I was wondering.
And go from there. You really, really don't need too much. So yeah, I don't know if I have any kits like available now on my website if you're trying to order tonight, but I have them. I have everything you need for them and can produce them very, very quickly. So.
How much like daily work do you have to, like if I'm not a gardener or whatever, like, you know, could I do it?
Yeah, absolutely. They're very, very easy. The goal of my blocks, my kits is that they are absolutely accessible to everybody, no matter
dummy
what.
proof. Just say dummy proof.
Okay. So mine are guaranteed to fruit. You literally, all you have to do, you take the block, you just wait for it to be fully white, and you just put a small X in the side of it, about a 1-inch cut, either X or Y shape. And then the mushrooms will fruit out of that. That's really all they need.
It's like making a pot pie.
It's even easier than that. I mean,
okay.
It's
if you can make a pot pie, you can grow mushrooms.
Yeah. You can.
Wow.
If you can make a small X, you will have mushrooms. Again, the size, quality, all will vary slightly, but you will get them. Yeah.
Is there any part of the process where you need to be right there for when this exact moment?
Sure.
Otherwise, you're gonna F it all up.
You know, compared to gardening, they are much quicker. So I think a lot of people, their first grow, they don't realize how quickly they will grow. And that's, you know, once you start understanding their biology in the wild, you'll kind of understand that they have very specific growing situations. And so their perfect natural growing situation is kind of a cool fall cloudy storm event, you know, maybe 2 or 3 days long of nice cool weather. It's windy, it's wet. And then they're like, oh, hey, this is when we need to fruit because this is when we can release our spores and we can reproduce that way. And so that's what they're evolved for. You know, it's not a tomato where it's kind of growing throughout the whole season and then eventually you get the tomatoes kind of later in the year. It's really a very defined. So yeah, like I'll say an oyster kit, you know, you'll have the pins that'll form, you make the little cut, and 3-4 days later you'll have a mushroom. So some people will be like, well, I'm gonna go on vacation for a week. I'll be like, just leave it in the fridge. You know, don't make the cut yet. You know, you can come back to the cut later, because it is usually, it's, you know, it can be definitely less than a week, you know, between cutting it and the mushroom's ready to harvest, and then understanding when the mushroom's at its prime.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. How do you know?
Yeah, it just depends kind of on the mushroom, but typically before it releases its spores. So on oysters, they're gonna kind of the rim of the gills are going to kind of be curving down, and then as they start to like flatten out, that's before they're going to release their spores. Lion's mane, the icicles or the teeth kind of elongate a little bit, and so that's when you would want to harvest those before those spores are released. If the spores start to drop, it's not a big deal. You can still harvest it and eat it, and it'll still be delicious. And then with most psilocybin ones, it's the gills as well, kind of as the veil breaks or as the cap kind of starts to open up. That's typically when I harvest them as well. So
and it's not like we see the spores; they're micro, right?
Right. Well, when they're concentrated like that, you typically can. So like oyster and lion's mane are typically white spores. So you'll actually see them either congregate. If it's not too windy where you're growing them, they'll kind of like congregate on the gills, and you'll kind of see these icicle-looking things. They're really kind of cool looking. Most cubensis are black, and so you'll kind of get these like black. And so if again it's kind of confined, low wind flow, low airflow situation, they'll just kind of drop right below them. So on an oyster, you'll get kind of this white dust underneath it basically, and then on a say a cubensis, you might get like kind of a black dust around it, sort of thing.
So let's say in my little tiny tub, the mushrooms are growing, but they're all kind of growing at different speeds,
Sure.
yes? So you might have some that are ready to pick now and maybe some later tonight.
Yeah, I mean, definitely from morning to evening can be pretty dramatic. So,
Okay.
I typically tell people try to just harvest the whole tub. All mushroom kits are generally multi-fruiting. So typically the limiting factor is going to be the moisture content of them, because a fruited mushroom of any variety is 80 to 90% water. And so like the kits I grow, like the gourmet kits I grow, are about 60% water, because that's just how much the substrate can hold. But when you fruit the mushroom, it'll take up most of that moisture out, and you just re-soak the block. So say a lion's mane block, you can just re-soak that, rehydrate it, and I've had many customers get 5-6 fruitings off of one block, because it's not the food, it's not the chemical energy in there that's the limiting factor, it's the moisture. So if you can keep the moisture up, or you can re-soak it, then you can have multiple fruitings off of that. And so similar with cubensis, the psilocybin mushrooms, if you're growing those in a tub situation, the mushrooms will pull out a lot of that moisture. Generally, that block, that brick, will kind of shrink up a little bit, and then you can soak it again or introduce more moisture again, and then you'll get another fruiting, typically 2 to 3 fruitings with those as well. So.
Do we also call fruitings flushes?
Flushes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, fruitings, flushes. Sorry if I'm...
Gross. Fleshings is grosser though.
Fruitings. Yeah.
Fruiting sounds
Yeah,
better.
There you go.
Yeah. And Maggie, I'm begging you, before you sign off, please just let me ask my weird mushroom questions at the end. But I'll shut up. But okay.
Yeah. Any other cultivation questions, or do we want to go back to the addiction questions? I'm by no means an addiction.
Oh, I can just, whenever you guys are ready, to double back to them. But they're for both of you. So
I had a couple more.
yeah.
So let's say we're picking our fruited mushrooms. What is your process as far as, do we let those dry out? Do you eat them?
Well, again, it depends on what you're growing. If you're going gourmets, you want to get them into the pan as quick as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just go through all of them.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So yeah, gourmet. I should preface this with all mushrooms. The purpose of a mushroom, and this is maybe back to the 101 difference of mycelium versus mushroom. The purpose of a mushroom, a fruiting body of the mycelium, is solely for reproduction. So its only purpose is to spread the spores. That is its only purpose. So the mycelium, the kind of white threads that you're seeing growing, that's the body of the organism, and those are going to keep growing and keep doing their thing. It's when they're happy, healthy, and hydrated that they produce the mushroom that's meant to release the spores, and that's what we're harvesting. Basically, the reason I say that is that once you've picked it, their sole purpose is gone, and they're going to start to degrade really quickly. So oysters, lion's mane, you really should be eating those within about 24 hours of harvesting. Reishi, most medicinals, you want to dry them pretty darn quickly as well. And then with cubensis as well, you do want to start drying them as quick as possible, because after 2 or 3 days, they can start to they'll die, they'll rot. They're no longer, their purpose of reproduction is gone, because they're not connected to their body anymore. And so, yes, you want to dry them typically as quick as possible and as dry as possible. So I know there's a lot of comments out there about kind of what temperature to dry them at. Some people will just room temperature. Some people will go at higher temperatures. I haven't really seen conclusive evidence to say your typical dehydrators gets too hot. I definitely think, if you're at like in an oven at 350, that's definitely too hot. But most dehydrators get between 175 and 195 is kind of typical. Okay. Some are adjustable. You can go a little lower than that. But the goal is to get that moisture out of there as quick as possible. So yeah, if you're going to harvest it, if you're doing a reishi or you're doing a cubensis, get it in the dehydrator ASAP, get it dry. And a lot of people say cracker dry, so you can touch it and it just breaks apart. And then if you're going to store it for any amount of time, store it in as airtight, moisture tight, and as light blocking as possible. So you want to use like silica packets, or you want to put it in a vacuum sealed bag or something like that, just a Ziploc baggie. In your closet isn't going to cut it. You definitely need to be a little bit better than that, because then the efficacy of whatever you're trying to get of, again, reishi or cubensis or lion's mane, that's going to go down over time. So they're going to degrade. So you want to get them dry and out of oxygen and out of sunlight as quick as possible, or as long as possible.
All right. I just wanted to talk real quick about when when the mushrooms are growing, what are your thoughts on, this little tiny mushroom compared to this
Sure.
big?
Yeah, if you're harvesting it in like kind of your first, if you have a flush where you have different size fruits in the same flush,
Yes.
definitely harvest the bigger ones first before their veil breaks and their spores drop. But I would say you want to harvest all of them probably within 24 hours. So
Okay.
if the big ones, because what'll happen is if the big ones are gone, that'll trigger the mycelium to say like, oh, this isn't working, our fruits aren't working, some panic, abort, stop, and then the other one, the little ones might stop as well. So it typically would say just harvest them all. But if a few of them are like way ahead of the other ones, yeah, grab those ones first, get those out of the way, give the other ones another 12 to 24 hours to kind of do their thing, and then harvest them, and then hydrate them, and then you'll probably get a second or third fruiting of them flushing.
And I know we were talking before, but there's ways to test for potency with psilocybin. But do you have any personal thoughts about having a larger size mushroom containing more versus a cap, a stem, or is it kind of all just
I mean, it's going to depend on a lot of
hearsay?
things. I wouldn't say it's hearsay, but it's going to depend on a lot of different things. Your strain, your genetics are definitely part of that. Substrate you're growing them on, how healthy they are. If they're fighting contamination at the same time that they're trying to grow, they're not going to be putting as much energy into that. Moisture content of them. Probably the biggest thing I've seen evidence of is kind of the stage you're harvesting them at. If you're harvesting them early, that typically tends to have less of the active compounds, and if you harvest them a little later, kind of at the sporing point, they tend to have a little bit more of them. When we are talking with psilocybin, we are talking about less than 1% of that, and so these fluctuations are small. But are probably noticeable. I mean, I've definitely heard stories of people saying they've taken just the littlest nibble and it sends them to the moon, and people eat
Right.
20, 30 fruits and it doesn't do anything. And I think that's probably more of a storage issue would be my guess,
Okay.
is probably if you're not storing them properly or storing them for too long, then that efficacy of them, that potency is going to go down significantly. So,
with that mind and thought, let's say you have your mushrooms properly stored, out of light, airtight. How long what's the shelf life with
I'd say
those?
if you are like 100% airtight and you are 100% light, out of light, you should be able to get a couple years out of storage
Wow,
of them.
okay.
It's just making sure that you are actually 100% airtight, because a Ziploc bag is not airtight.
Is it mason jar?
Mason jar's better. I'd say mason jar's, you're trying at least a little bit with a mason jar. If you're gonna do a mason jar, then like put in some silica packets or some packets that'll absorb the oxygen or absorb the moisture in there. Any and all those sorts of things are gonna help significantly. So, but one reason I think chocolates are really popular with it is that's a way to kind of preserve it as well.
Yeah.
You're able to like coat it with that fat of the chocolate and kind of preserve them in those little pieces. Honey is another good one. Blue honey is really popular, where you take fruits, dry them out again, really, 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 really dry, put them into honey, and then that will store almost indefinitely as well.
Oh, wow.
So there's a few different processes with that. Some people do, there's a risk there of like salmonella and some foodborne things if you do it improperly. You don't have fully dried fruits or stuff like that. So, always do your proper research and use proper processes. But
Okay, Gabe, did we want to touch on some of the microdosing?
I've got a few things, but first of all, I guess just even before I get to those, just on the thread we're on right now, have you ever seen any information that kind of conclusively states whether it's better to, some people like to chop their mushrooms up, some people like to put it in tea, some people like to chew them like whole or whatever. Do you, does that impact your physiology differently?
absolutely, yeah, because kind of what I mentioned with the rishis and the beta glucans, a lot of the mushroom, there's a lot of protective pieces on the mushroom cells. So the beta glucans and the chitin, which is another protein in there, are very hard for our body to digest. And so if you do eat, say again, with cubensis, if you eat one raw or dried and whole, it's actually really hard for your body to break it down. So you can get an upset stomach just from the fact that you're eating like a raw mushroom, a dried raw mushroom. Your stomach it can be really hard for your stomach to break that down. So some people will do teas, or another common one is lemon tech, where like use lemon juice, lime juice to kind of extract that out or dissolve some of those active compounds out. I would say, potency wise or effect wise, they're all going to be slightly different. If you're eating the raw fruiting body, or ground up or whole, you're getting all of it, but your body not, you're putting all of it in your body, but your body might not be able to extract all of it out. And if you're doing tea, you definitely are getting a lower dosage of it. It's going to be less of an effect than if you eat it raw. Or lemon tech. Most people say if they're doing lemon tech, it's a shorter.
Yes.
And it's like quicker up, shorter peak, and then quicker down sort of thing. And so I guess I would say just, figure out what works best for you and your body. I know a lot of people are turned off just because of that queasiness. You can get an upset stomach, can be stuck on the toilet for a while with them and stuff like that. So if that's your case, maybe, try them as a gummy, try them as a tea, try them as, lemon. Some people, the lemon tech works well. I think it just comes down to what works for you and your body and kind of what the effect you're looking for of them.
So between chopping it up and eating the whole mushroom, you don't think there's a big difference there necessarily? I mean, you said a little bit in like the potency.
I would just say in the ability for your body to digest it, because it's very hard to digest. So if you're somehow swallowing like a whole fruit.
Oh yeah, no, I tried to do it. It's horrible.
Yeah, that doesn't sound great. Then it's gonna, by the time it gets through your digestive system, it's probably not gonna have because it's so hard to break down. You're not gonna have taken as much out of it into your absorbed as much of it into your system versus powderizing it or putting it in tea or something like that. So yeah, I would definitely say if you're looking for a high potency experience, then grinding it up somehow or extracting it somehow is definitely going to be more beneficial. So
Well, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then for you guys for the addiction stuff, one thing I guess, and I'm sorry if you covered it if I missed it, but in hearing all these, Maggie, for instance, like I've heard, I was starting to land on this conclusion just in my own head from what I'm observing is like, I don't think microdosing is as good for the addiction stuff. Like you need the macro dose for the strong perspective or for that like to jolt you out of your body kind of. But now both of you are kind of advocating very much that microdosing is really good for it. So why do you think that microdosing works for addiction so well? Like if you're not getting out of your body to get that that different perception, what is it about it that changes it?
I mean, I think I'm going to start. I think Byron hit the nail on the head when he said that you personally have to be ready to give up whatever substance or issue it is you're addicted to. I think just now and thinking back, it's something that I'm realizing that, I truly was in my mind just so sick of drinking and so sick of feeling like shit every day. And it was something that I was hoping to be done with. But I also, I think that I had reached my limit with that vice, I guess. And yeah, I kind of disagree because in regards to macro dosing for addiction versus micro, all I know is my story, and I was definitely, on the micro end of things. But again, I think we get so caught up with micro versus macro, and I think it's really honing in on your intention and dosage, and really committing to, there's all sorts of protocols out there. But who's to say that if you've got a big goal in mind, like to give up alcohol for maybe the rest of your life, you might need 10 to 15 days, maybe outside of work, or, it's different for everyone. So I think it's all about, again, the set and setting, even in a micro situation, to really prep you for what it is you're trying to overcome.
Well, so I guess, and maybe I didn't phrase it well. What I'm actually trying to ask is, because I know that you guys are big believers in microdosing, and that it is, I know it works for a fact or whatever. I just can't understand it logically. Like, what is it about, if it's not changing your perception, why is it helping you with your drinking so much? Is it quelling the urge or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it even at the micro level, it is changing your chemistry. It's changing your perception of reality a little bit, maybe not the conscious level. But if you're, say, again, you're drinking for a stressful job, because that's a large part of what I was doing, it wasn't the alcohol necessarily that I wanted. It was just that break from the daily stresses that I was dealing with at the time. And so maybe we talk about dosing a little bit. I mean, microdosing, again, I said technically is the subconscious level, not that it's messing with your consciousness, but I would say probably what I was doing was like a small recreational dose. I was probably doing like a half of a gram, which would definitely be kind of above the true micro level of it. So it was affecting my consciousness a little bit, just not to the point where it was like, again, I'm not like seeing elephants on the wall or like, not seeing like anything crazy or doing that, but it was just enough for me to kind of like
small euphoria kind of.
Maybe it was like half a beer worth, it was like if you were to like if you were to try to like make an analogy of it, it's like having a beer or having a glass of wine. It's not so much that you're like drunk at the end of the night, but it was just enough to like kind of change it. Or like, again, I talk a lot about the ritual of it because a lot of addictions become very ritualistic. Nicotine is very ritualistic. Alcohol becomes very ritualistic. A lot of other, eating and different things like that can be that way. So if you can change your pattern of behavior, sometimes that alone can be, pretty major to it. Or for me, it was just like knowing that I had something else, because even at that micro or small recreational dose level, you are getting a lot of euphoria feeling. You're getting a lot of, subtle feelings of euphoria, subtle happiness. The stressors are gone. And I had a friend that just called them happy pills. He's like, oh, can I get some more happy pills? I was like, okay, well, that's one way to say it. But I mean, it really very much was. It was just a way to kind of like take the edge off. Where when you're doing that with alcohol, you're poisoning yourself. You are not healing yourself. You're giving yourself, you're ingesting poison on a regular basis. Versus, let's change that and make it something that's gonna be more beneficial and add benefit to your life and allow you perspective to think about why you were drinking, what you're doing versus just the numbing factor of it. So,
I have to add, I do think with microdosing over a certain period of time, that's also combating or working to combat maybe some depression, or that's what's happened to me. So
absolutely.
It first started with, stopping the drinking, and then I continued to microdose. And then before I knew it, I realized that I was no longer crying daily.
How do you think it helps for depression, Maggie? Like, I mean, is it just that little bit of euphoria, kind of like pep in your step?
I think
that's a great answer, by the way. Thank you.
I think that there's that, but then also from other guests that we've on the podcast, Dr. Jessica Nielsen talks directly about microdosing, literally wiring our brains, as does macrodosing. But there's something with psilocybin and the way it works in our brains to create neuroplasticity and other, I think it helps to connect different pathways. I'm not a doctor.
No, that's great though. Yeah, because I didn't remember that.
Yeah, it does work. It does work on some of the same like serotonin pathways, like the SSRI. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of those. If you're on one of those, psilocybin might not be the best choice because they do act on similar pathways, and so they can be kind of ineffective, and you can actually kind of like overdose on serotonin potentially. It's very rare, but it can happen. So people that are suffering from chronic depression, a lot of times they'll have to get themselves off of those antidepressants before they can start using psilocybin. So it is definitely in those same pathways, and there is a chemical change happening to your body in a micro or macro level. Or again, it's those habits. I talk a lot about that with people of like it's breaking those shells, it's breaking those layers that you have of those conditioned responses to life and to your stressors, and maybe breaking some, changing some of those stressors in your life too. If for me, I don't have that job that I had before. I realized that job was not good for my mental health, and so I was drinking to cope with some of the stress of that. And so I got a new job, and that one was pretty stressful too. So I got another new job, and then now I'm fully engulfed in the mushroom world, which I'm extremely ecstatic about being. And so there's different things there where it can. Again, alcohol specifically, but other more serious, drugs, opioids and stuff like that can, again, if it has that numbing effect, you're not really solving the problem. You're just kind of prolonging it or numbing it or pushing it away. Versus something like a psychedelic like psilocybin can actually help you gain perspective and understand and say, okay, this is why I'm stressed. This is why I'm drinking. This is why I'm taking pills. This is why I'm doing those things. So.
Well, my belief, thanks to psilocybin, is I feel like it's literally the exact opposite of alcohol. So at the end of the day, when I realized, I wanted to be done, I wasn't feeling well, I literally made like a pro and con list. Like, what does alcohol offer me? And the only two things that at the end of the day that it offered me were depression and anxiety. And so I think, when I stopped drinking and then started microdosing, just even that little, like we were saying before, the little bits of euphoria.
It's like the Advil. It's just an Advil that just takes the buzz off. It's just like
right.
It's just that little buzz. It's just like makes this a little more bearable, makes this a little bit more.
But that little glimmer is 100 times better than the, what do we call the other one?
It's that psychological crutch or whatever.
Yeah.
So
That's the best answer you guys have ever. Like, really, I get it now. That is awesome.
I'm so happy for you.
Yes,
Gabe.
thank you very much. Like, for real, I've been struggling with that, so I get it now. And then, so is there any negative effect that mushrooms put in our body at all?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely have heard that question quite a bit. Short answer is no. I mean, this is something that's been used and ingested for thousands and thousands. I believe it's like 6,000 years we've had documentation of psilocybin mushrooms, and many people will push it back even further. I mean, some people say psilocybin was the reason we have language. Some people say it's the reason we have fire. Some people say it's the reason we, did a lot of things in our evolutionary history, which none of that has evidence for, but some people have speculated. I really think no. I mean, I think there was maybe one study that said somebody that had tinnitus, the ringing in your ears. Somebody said that when they took mushrooms, that made it a little bit worse. Some people say it cured it. So I think it's just kind of a personal thing. But no, I mean, compared to when you look at, say a pharmaceutical drug that has to go through, millions, if not billions of dollars of research and study, and then they have to go in there and they have to say, is this effective? The scores for what are effective, and I can't remember the rating. I'm gonna mess this up, so I apologize. But the effectiveness rating of some of those things are like, is it 5% effective? Is it 10% effective? Well, that's reason enough to put it on the market. Where when you look at a lot of the psilocybin studies, we're talking about sometimes 85 to 95% effectiveness, and a lot of scientists and people reviewing these articles are just like, well, that's too good. You can't have something that's that good, because our bar is so low with pharmaceuticals that says, well, we only need it to be 5% effective because we've invested $5 billion into this drug. We have to make our money back on it. So even if it's 5% effective, we're going to put it to the market and help 5% of people, but give 95% of people hope and false hope in that it's going to solve their problems. Versus with psilocybin, I mean, it's been ingested for years. There's really no evidence out there to say that it's bad. It's non-addictive. Even at high levels, you're not going to overdose of it, and through chronic, for long time use of it, you're not going to see any detrimental effects. So no, I mean, I'll stand on that. I'll stand on that.
Do you think we're meant to take it? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? It's very odd that it's that symbiotic with our body, I guess.
Yeah. So the evolutionary history I've heard of why psilocybin exists as a chemical is that it was actually produced. It started being produced by this mycelium as a way to actually inhibit the appetite of other competing organisms. So if the mycelium was fighting for a food source with other organisms, it was actually if the other organism ate some of the mycelium, then this chemical would actually reduce their appetite, and so then it would give the mycelium the evolutionary advantage or the competitive advantage on the food source and allow it to eat more of it. And so that's why it has very much like one theory. Again, this is theoretical of why it has such a it decreases your appetite. It's not like say cannabis where you get the munchies. You very much don't have as much of an appetite on when taking psilocybin, and it's being used for some eating disorders with incredible efficacy. Efficacy.
Yeah.
And so I think some of that can it can be I can't think of the right word, happy accident, I guess, or just a evolutionary thing where it happens to also have some of these effects on us, but it is technically food poisoning. When you have psilocybin and you have those mushrooms, you are technically giving yourself food poisoning. So you are probably going to get an upset stomach. Your body's going to say, hey, why did you eat this? Like this isn't an apple or a carrot or something like that. So you do have to keep that in mind again of your dosage and of your stuff like that. I mean, you are giving yourself food poisoning, but the benefit of it is
good food poisoning. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's compared to some of the stuff we put in our bodies. Again, alcohol and sugar and McDonald's and all those things. I mean, I would much rather put a mushroom in my body than Diet Dr. Pepper and
I think it would make an excellent study if there was mandatory microdosing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know there's a lot of double-blind studies and stuff like that too that are being done with it.
Yeah. But at what age? And this kind of leads me to a question I was hoping to ask you.
Sure.
So, I have a child. She's almost 13. What are your thoughts? And yours might be younger, but talking to kids about this, you know, I'm from a household where alcoholism kind of plagued my family for generations, and that wasn't really talked about. But I'm just interested to talk to you about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, not to diverge the conversation, but I think that also comes in just a general idea of mental health and the generational, what is it called? Generational
Trauma.
Generational trauma that's kind of going on right now. I mean, that I think what I would say is start there. I mean, start with having honest conversations with your kids, being open and honest about your emotions, being open and honest with your kids' emotions, allowing them to think and feel and be who they are and who they are, you know, they want to be, versus, you know, generations before where it was, you know, boys aren't supposed to cry and girls are supposed to be pretty, and you have trauma in your life, you have death, you have, you know, too much I don't even want to think about, that, you know, not able to process that. So I think I don't want to say, you know, it is a federally regulated substance, which is something that, you know, obviously we all have to consider. So I'm not recommending giving it to children of any age.
Correct.
I'm not recommending to anybody to take this.
Right.
So, you know, that is up to you at your source. But I would say I think the conversation needs to be just like, how do we deal with that generational trauma, or how do we just allow mental health conversations to happen? Because that's really a lot of what this is. It's just mental health issues that are happening, and it's finding a substance, finding a compound that is much better at allowing us to process our mental health and allowing us to be in that stance.
I guess, yeah, and I so appreciate that. And I'm thinking about, like, when I'm hoping that about the time when I started drinking, you know, high school, it would have been nice to know about this other safer
and
option.
I think on a recreational level, I would love to see it become more recreationally or less taboo, or obviously legal, or normalized legal too, because it is so much better than alcohol. So I would love for people to, you know, go out to a concert, you know, again, say a 20-something-year-old going to a concert and not feeling pressured to drink, or being able to not be the weird one in the corner who's on mushrooms and everybody's looking at them weird, like, what are they experiencing? And they're like, well, dude, I had half a gram, it's fine. You know, like, nothing's crazy happening. And so I would love to see that. I'd love to be able to you go to a store. I mean, now you can get recreational cannabis, you know, quite a bit. And so, you know, being able to go to a store and being able to, or go to a bar, even go to a club, maybe, again, when I say bar, you know, a social atmosphere, maybe not a bar, because that's alcohol, you know, based, but going to a social outing, social environment where you have the option of alcohol for those who choose, or cannabis for those who choose, or mushrooms for those who choose, or other, there's other great substances out there that are better than alcohol, at least. And so, you know, that would be where I'd want to just go, is for people to have that, because, yeah.
Well, I might be writing a children's book.
Oh, nice. I mean, no, I would just say that it's I don't know, it's your choice. It's something that's helping you. It's you know, trying to get rid of that taboo. If it's a street drug, if it's all of the negatives of it, I would say just trying to, like, get rid of those and allow the conversation to be open to what you know, if it's a mental health reason, or if it's, you know, different reasons, or what it is, and kind of, again, breaking just like what is fungi, what is mushrooms, what are all these things. A lot of kids just think mushrooms are, you know, gross things that their parents put on their pizza, and that's it. Or it's so much more than that. So.
Well, that's why we're here. So I can kind of answer my own question. Were there any other questions, Gabe?
This is my last one. Is just like so I don't know if he's heard about the using mushrooms for quantum computing, or that they've built computers out of mushrooms now.
I heard something of it, but I've not done any.
It is bananas. So then I started reading about all these other, like, woo aspects, which, you know, I had heard the stoned ape theory, you know, that's, you know, and then I've heard of it as an alien intelligence, that there's evidence of it having, because it stores data that they discovered, I guess. I don't know. I'm just curious if you've heard any of these many conspiracies, if one is more plausible than the others. I
mean, I would just say, diving into a basic understanding of what mycelium are is probably more relevant, because evolutionary wise, they are much more similar to animals than they are to plants or anything else. And so there's you know, back to that reason of, like, how do some of these chemicals, why are they so effective at, or their efficacy is so good for us. Again, with lion's mane, with reishi, with other different things, is because evolutionarily they're a lot closer to us. To understand that pathway, that path that they went on, they're a lot closer to us, and they're also extremely intelligent. I mean, their immune systems, their communication systems, they're so much more advanced than 99.999% of people can even fathom of them. Their complexity, their chemical complexity, their bioelectric complexity is just mind-boggling. And again, to go back to the 80s and say that they were just weird plants, we're still just scratching the surface of understanding them. And that's probably because that they're small, they're different, they're hard to see. We see the mushroom growing, but that's not the organism. The organism is the mycelium, and that's really what we have very, very little knowledge of, because it's weird. It's in dead logs. It's just things that we haven't really focused on.
Does it not cover the entire Earth, the mycelium network?
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it's the largest organisms on Earth. It's everywhere. I mean, just like you probably have more types of fungi in your belly button than there are plants on a typical city block. It's just the scale of it is just unfathomable.
Isn't it 3/4 of all of our if you looked at, I don't know, the mass of all of our organisms, it's 75% of it is mushrooms.
I wouldn't surprise
is what
me.
that's what I heard once.
Yeah, I mean, again, their role in the evolution of the planet is just unfathomable. Their role in evolution in general. I mean, we're in our 8th mass extinction event, caused by humans, but the other 7, who was there to recycle? Who was there to bring everything back to life? It was mycelium. Myceliums are the recyclers, are the ones that were out there. They were the ones who decomposed the dinosaurs and brought life back to being possible.
Alien intelligence.
No, I would say it's Earth intelligence. We don't give ourselves enough credit. We're limiting ourselves with our 5 senses and with our computers and with what we can think we can understand, that we are not actually understanding what is there, and the amount of intelligence in an inch of soil, a cubic inch of soil, is just mind-boggling to understand. I mean, there's so much biodiversity in that. It's just fantastic.
How do we know that they communicate?
Well, with bioelectrical signals, people, if you think of, there's a lot of people that do those instruments with them, where they'll poke a bunch of mushrooms and have them make the sounds. I mean, that's communication. I mean, communication in the sense of verbal, sound waves.
Sure, I get that.
Yeah. But they're able to communicate with plants. They're able to communicate with them different organisms, different mycelium. They're able to send signals, chemical and electrical signals, and help talk with them. And they're able to move nutrients around, all the symbiotic relationships they have with plants and trees and stuff like that. There's studies out there that will show that you can actually trace nitrogen from salmon into redwoods, up into 100 feet up into a redwood tree, and they're why is there salmon nitrogen up here? And they realized it was a symbiotic relationship with mycelium that was actually breaking down the fish and bringing it to the tree, and then the tree was bringing absorbing it up into the tree. And I mean,
crazy.
It's literally mind-boggling. I mean, the amount of research out there that needs to be done, that should be done. I mean, we should not be focusing on aliens. We should not be focusing on these out of planet things, when we have all the answers, we have all the knowledge, we have everything we need right in front of us. If we could just open our eyes and our minds to what is right in front of us and give it its due time and due say, I think we would be much better off.
Is there a great book that you recommend? Just before that's the last thing I'll say.
I mean, if you're, an introduction to it, I'll go back to the Mycelium Running by Paul Stamets. That's a great just intro book. Otherwise, just get on Google Scholar and start typing away, and you're gonna have your mind blown. You're gonna, it's out there. People are doing the research. People are on it. There's some fantastic Facebook groups that are science-based, that are research-based, that are doing this work at either a home level or at a very, very high educational level. But the work's being done. We just need more people in it. If that's anything, it's just get more people interested, get more kids excited about it, get them understanding that mushrooms aren't weird and ugly and gross and taste bad. What are they? What is mycelium? How do we go forward and move forward with this? Because I think in the next 50 to 100 years, hopefully we have the technology, hopefully we have the research to see what there really is and what's really out there. So
awesome.
Yes, exciting and awesome. Alrighty. Well, let's be sure we have the
elevatedmycology.com. Awesome.
Plug that. Yep.
And it was so great to have you on. And I think we realized that it's an endless conversation. So I hope to have you back.
Yes, I would love to come back. Any one of those topics could probably be multiple episodes. So, absolutely.
Well, super. Thank you so much, Byron. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
For joining and watching.
This